Hi, thank you for taking the time today to talk about protein with me. My name is Jenny Beekman. I am a registered dietitian, and I will say one of the most common questions that I get is about protein. So, looking forward to sharing a little bit of information as it relates to protein. To get started, let's talk about what is protein. Proteins are the essential building blocks of our body. They make up the enzymes that power many chemical reactions and the hemoglobin that carries oxygen in our blood. So they're pretty important. They're made up of thousands of smaller units, which are called amino acids. About 20 different types of amino acids that our bodies require really to stay healthy and to function properly. We'll talk about some of these later in the presentation, but it is important to know that proteins are found from both plant and animal sources. 9 amino acids are known as essential amino acids, meaning they have to come from food. And I think that is sometimes where people can get a little confused about protein and where you find protein. What is an essential amino acid, a non essential amino acid? So, all of that we'll discuss here soon in the presentation. When it comes to our daily diet, many of us tend to focus on number of calories, fat, carbohydrates we eat, but it's also really important to make sure we're getting enough protein. Not getting enough protein can lead to a lot of different health issues. So we see here some of the health benefits of protein, building and repairing muscle, cartilage, and skin cells. So whether that's if you're working out and trying to build muscle, if you're an athlete and trying to build muscle, if you're kind of entering a second half of life and just don't want to lose muscle, protein is incredibly important. Strengthening bones. I'm sure many of us heard, when we were younger, drink that milk. It helps with your bones. There's lots of other things besides milk that have protein, but it really does help with bone strength, which is important throughout our entire life. It really helps to lower the risks of osteoporosis as well. Boosting the immune system. If you think back to if you get sick, often it was, well, have your chicken noodle soup. Well, one of the things in the chicken noodle soup was the chicken, which is a source of protein. And you may not have realized that that was actually helping to boost your immune system. Helps to stabilize blood sugars. So often when we talk about diabetes, we focus on carbohydrates, right? And making sure that the carbohydrate amounts, you're getting enough carbohydrates, not too many carbohydrates. A protein really helps to stabilize those. So you might have some carbohydrates that are going to spike your blood sugars a little bit, but protein will stabilize it so you don't have a peak and then a rapid decrease. So really having some carbohydrates and proteins together is essential when you're trying to stabilize blood sugars. And then also aiding in hormone regulation. Get a lot of questions about menopause and the role protein has in menopause. Again, that goes to hormone regulation, but it's not just for women in kind of the menopausal years. It's all of us. There's different times when hormones are spiking and hormones are changing, and protein really does play a pivotal role in helping to regulate the hormones a little bit. So, really, what are the different types of protein? Not all proteins are the same. And really, where they come in different is they're defined by how many essential amino acids they provide. So, again, there were 9 essential amino acids. Okay. Complete proteins contain all 9 of these essential amino acids. And your body can't produce these essential amino acids on their own. You have to get them from food. This tends to be your animal sources, the beef, seafood, pork, poultry, eggs are in here, dairy is in here, but there are also some soy sources that have our complete proteins and have all 9 amino acids. Things like tofu, edamame, tempeh. Some people may not know what tempeh is. It has a really strong nutty flavor. It works in a lot of dishes like soups and stews, stir fries. You can strip it up, cube it up. It can even be crumbled. You'll often find it near the tofu section of the grocery store. And then miso is also a complete protein. It's a fermented soybean paste. It's used in a lot of Japanese cooking. You do have to really be careful and look at the food label because it can be high in salt, but there's also plenty that are lower in sodium. And you tend to find it in the Asian food section. But all of these are complete proteins, have all 9 essential amino acids. There are also incomplete proteins. Just because a protein is incomplete does not mean that you should omit it. These are missing or don't contain all 9 of the essential amino acids, but they still have essential amino acids, are still a protein source, and are still really healthy for you. Uh, these are going to be your things like your nuts and your seeds. And so, sunflower, pumpkin seeds, pecans, walnuts, all of those really healthy foods that do contain protein. Legumes, I often say legumes are kind of an underrated but really impactful and healthy protein source. Your dry beans, your peas, lentils, soybeans, peanuts in here, really healthy. A lot of a lot of these tend to be less expensive as well. So definitely when you're thinking about meal planning and how you can incorporate protein into your meal plan, highly encourage you to focus on the legumes. And then whole grains. They're not just carbohydrates, whole grains, the wheats, the rye, corn, rice, oats, barley, these all have a good source of protein as well. So just because they don't have all 9 essential amino acids does not mean that we should omit them or not consider them when we're meal planning for our protein. Because we can have complementary proteins. So complementary proteins are formed by combining a couple of incomplete proteins to compensate. So you can take 2 incomplete proteins and put them together, and you may now have a complete protein. This is why often you'll see things such as whole wheat bread with almond butter or some sort of meat, nut or seed butter, yogurt with nuts and seeds. Right there, you've got a very complete protein. Hummus on pita bread, very common, very popular. And between the pita bread and the hummus, you've now got a complete protein. And red beans and brown rice. I say this often, but beans, rice, lentils, legumes, these are really healthy foods, really inexpensive foods, and they are going to provide you a complete protein. The other thing to know about complementary proteins is that they don't have to necessarily be eaten together in the same meal. You can spread them out throughout the day and you'll still get the same nutritional benefits. So here in the examples, these are foods that you might put together. But if you just incorporate a variety of the different plant-based foods throughout the day, you'll still get the benefit. But sometimes people do, lean towards protein powders. They're just not able to get enough protein, different types of protein in a day, and so they use protein powders to help aid in that. These are really beneficial for people, especially athletes, older adults, vegetarians, if you're vegan. So protein powders, they can come from a variety of different sources. The protein powders from things such as eggs and milk, those tend to be your whey and casein protein powders. So the whey protein powder is kind of more commonly used for improving athletic performance, increasing strength. Your casein protein powder, that might help to speed up muscle recovery after exercise. There are also plant-based protein powders from soybeans, peas, hemp. So the soy protein powders are unlike other plant-based because they contain all 9 essential amino acids. So if you use a soy protein powder, you're making it a complete protein. The pea protein powders, these have a lot of iron, right? So if iron is something that you're struggling with, I might recommend looking at a pea protein powder. And they're a very high quality alternative to a soy or a dairy-based protein. So if you're still trying to, you just can't do a soy protein powder, a pea protein powder might be worth looking at because it's going to be a good alternative. And then your hemp protein powder, this also is a complete protein. So again, it has all 9 of the essential amino acids, really good for fiber, helps you to stay full longer, helps with metabolism. So as you can see, we just went through 5 different types of protein powders. A lot of them are used for different reasons. So not all protein powders are created the same or intended to be used for the same reason. Really kind of recommend you do a little bit of research into what is the reason that you're looking at using a protein powder, and then what kind of protein powder is it that you're going to want to use. And also remember that protein powders aren't regulated by the FDA for safety. So really focus on reading the nutrition label. A lot of these powders can have unexpected ingredients, a lot of added sugar, a lot of added calories. So it is really important that you do a little research, read the food label, and really do understand what is in the protein powder that you're selecting. And then we get to how much protein do you need? So obviously a very common question. Well, how much do I need? And today I'm sorry, I can't necessarily tell you how much protein that you need. It depends on so many different factors. And it can change, even within a year for you, depending on different situations. Gender, age, weight, that all goes into how much protein you need. But activity level, pregnancy, breastfeeding, different medical conditions all have an impact on how much protein we need. Here's a very general recommendation. So for adults, 0.8 grams of protein for every kilogram of body weight. Or if we want to look at pounds instead of kilograms, about 7 grams of protein for every 20 pounds of body weight you are. Now, if you're an athlete and you need a little more protein, that might be up to 1.2 grams. Obviously, with medical conditions, you're going to want to consult your physician because it can be very different and create a plan together. But kind of the average is about 0.8 grams for every kilogram of body weight. And if you look at your whole day, you want it to be, again, this is a big range because protein is a big range, 10 to 35% of the calories that you take in a day. So if you were to kind of keep track of how many calories you're taking in every day, you want it to fall, maybe roughly around that 20, 25%. And going through some food examples of how much protein you can find in different foods. So 3 ounces of meat is equivalent to about 20 grams of protein. Now, this is going to vary based on different food items, but as a very general statement, 3 ounces of meat, about 20 grams of protein. A cup of milk is about 8 grams of protein. 1 egg is 6 grams of protein. A fourth of a cup of tofu is about 5 grams of protein. Here we've got, a quarter cup of cooked beans. That's about 4 grams. Sometimes people eat more than a quarter cup. And then peanut butter is about 4 grams. So the thing I really encourage you to kind of keep top of mind is I want you to focus on not only the protein that you're eating, but the protein package. So how much fat, how much sodium, how many other components are in the food that you're taking. For example, you could take 4 ounces of a ham steak, which is about 22 grams of protein. That's a great amount of protein, right? But that also has that 4 ounces of ham steak has about 1,500 milligrams of sodium. What would you need in a day? Let's compare that to 4 ounces of salmon, which is about 30 grams of protein, a little bit more protein, but essentially in line with the ham steak. But that salmon is going to have low sodium and be a really great source of omega-3s. So in this example, the protein package from the 4 ounces of salmon is much greater than the protein package from the 4 ounces of ham steak. And then a cup of cooked lentils. So up here, it says a quarter cup, and I said people tend to have a little bit more. So if you have about 1 cup of cooked lentils, that's about 18 grams. So a little in line with the ham steak. But those lentils also have 15 grams of fiber, going to help to keep you feeling full, and almost no sodium. So again, a really great protein package. Um, I firmly believe in moderation, eating foods, being aware of the content of the foods, the nutrient density of the foods. So maybe a little less than 4 ounces of ham steak, knowing how high it is in sodium, and pairing that with some great plant-based protein sources would be a good idea when you're going to have something, as high in sodium as a ham steak. There are some simple ways to increase your protein. So a lot of times people are looking, well, how can I increase my protein? What are things that I can do? Um, I just this morning had oatmeal, and you could add milk or soy milk instead of water. That's a very easy substitution that you can make. Beans and cheese to eggs. I will tell you one of my favorite breakfasts. It's a breakfast burrito, but I'll do some scrambled eggs, and I love to add either pinto beans or black beans. Um, I like Parmesan cheese, but you could add a little bit of cheese as well. And then if there's some veggies that you enjoy, that would make a fantastic breakfast burrito. And you've just incorporated protein-based, plant-based proteins as well with the beans. Protein powders, if that's the route you're going to go, they're great in cereal, yogurt, smoothies, avocado. So we see, toast with avocado a lot, but if you could incorporate some nuts or seeds on top of that toast with avocado, that would be fantastic. You've got your wheat toast and your nuts and seeds, complementary proteins there. Hummus. So we talked about hummus and pita, and hummus with veggies, hummus with wheat crackers. There's lots of possibilities for hummus to increase the protein. And then anytime you have the opportunity to use whole grain rice or pasta, I know that's an individual preference, but I would encourage, if it's a possibility, to kind of transition to a little bit of whole grain. Sometimes people do 50-50, or just use it sparingly, but it will be a great way to increase your protein. And when you're shopping for protein, a couple of things to keep in mind. Whole foods when you're able. And the reason I put this is sometimes packaged and processed foods can be really high in fat and sodium, lots of other health risks as well. So just trying to pick whole foods when you can, and being aware of some of the other additives that are put in some of the more packaged and prepared foods. So keeping an eye on that sodium, on the sugar. It's about reading the food label. What are your frozen options? Frozen foods are good foods. They're often just as nutritious as the fresh foods, lower price, and they last a lot longer. Buying in bulk, especially with protein, sometimes this is a way to keep your costs down a little bit. Frozen meats and seafoods, beans and nuts, all of these can be purchased in bulk and a little bit less expensive. And then I would say just try something new. Try a few plant-based options if you can. Try to keep things new, interesting. That anytime you can incorporate a little variety into your diet, that absolutely helps. So what is the bottom line on protein? When able, try to get protein from plants. It's a win for your health, also a win for the planet. Remembering to mix and match, so no essential components of protein is missing. So if you're focusing on the plant-based proteins, trying to get those complementary proteins in. And I didn't talk a lot about the planet and protein, but I do know that sometimes people say they're avoiding animal foods because of the impact it has on the planet. So I just wanted to make sure to incorporate that as well. Sometimes production of animal-based foods will have a higher greenhouse gas emission than producing plant-based foods. So that's often why you'll hear people say they've gone vegetarian or they're focusing on plants. And it is important to just recognize that that is the reason why. And if you're using animal sources for protein, getting your essential amino acids, keep in mind what that protein package is. Focus on the other components of the food, the omegas, the fiber, the sodium, added sugars, what those might be. And then whenever you can, swapping out red meats for some healthier meats. Again, I do believe in moderation. And if there are foods that are red meat and you really like them, by all means, please continue to eat them. Just focus on how much of them you're eating and how often you're eating, and then making some healthier swap outs when you can. That concludes the protein presentation. Thank you so much for your time today. And I wish you the best of luck with increasing your protein. Have a good day.